DG and HR talk about the vacancies. Then to the Honourable Lecker, thank you very much also for appreciating the work of the department. I think, first of all, on the safety plan, of course, and this also goes to the Honourable Stevens's question around the safety plan. You ask about the data, and I heed what the chairperson has said. I mean, high-level data, we know right now that there's a murder reduction rate of 4% in the province, and we know that in the LEAP deployment areas, it's now 11%, which is great news because that's the highest multiplier. Yesterday, I was with the LEAP commander, with the SAP station commander, in Mitchell's Plain. We had a meeting at the police station. We actually looked at the position the police station's in from a resourcing point of view. And it's interesting to listen to SAPS and LEAP, how they talk with each other, how they rely on that force multiplier effect because SAPS is so under-resourced in our province. I mean, hectically under-resourced. We've grown in the last 10 years in the city alone. We've gone from 4 million citizens to 5 million citizens, but we've actually had a reduction in active police officers on the ground. That cannot be. So I think, as the Honourable Stevens says, you know, especially across the Cape Flats, that's where people are really feeling this crime. Yesterday, I'm standing in the road chatting to residents. I meet a mom or a grandmother, but I mean, she was the mom. She brought up this young boy who at 16 years old gets shot 27 times in their street. And still, there's no arrest, there's no investigation. It's like just hanging. It is horrendous. And so we need to make sure that we're getting properly resourced. But that's the idea of the side of the safety plan that is boots on the ground. But the reason that it sits here and the reason I even talk about it is that I chair the bringing together of the safety plan because it resides in all the departments. So obviously we've had a session in this committee with the police oversight and community safety team, which is the responsible sort of channel for LEAP. But the safety plan is also about the Department of Health and the violence prevention. So, you know, that's where those questions will be asked in that standing committee, but this is where it gets pulled together. That's where the Planet Youth programs are implemented, about trying to get ahead of the curve where substance abuse in 13-year-olds is an issue that we need to deal with. That's the program. I think the most comprehensive ever embarked on, where in 123 schools, over 50,000 13-year-olds interviewed. And through that data now, what are those interventions that can be put in place? Or the Khulisa Care program, which is really zooming in and saying, how do we make sure we're not setting up children to fail? And that is the stunting that we see growing in our province because of malnutrition. That comes out of our policy unit here in the Premier's office, but then that policy unit then puts the policy or the research on the table, and then the department takes it up. That one is a partnership between private sector, that's ShopRite, between the DG Murray Trust, and I think if we can actually find traction in that program, it's not only going to be relevant for us, but relevant in all parts of the world where stunting is a big issue. And so I can go on DCAS. But of course, those are the programs that will be dealt with in those standing committees. DCAS, perhaps also back to POX, not only policing on the ground, but Project Chrysalis. The question would be, can it be massified? I know it's been tried a few times. We've shared it with other provinces. It hasn't really worked. Where it has worked is where Chrysalis is now. It's obviously got something about that place, and the people and the board just seem to get it right. But it's also about the Year Beyond programs. So it's about violence prevention. But the reason it sits here is that myself as chair and this department plays that cross-cutting role when it comes to safety. Then the Honourable Lecker speaking on page 15, that's the declaration under 2 coalition. So the under 2 coalition is a group of regions from around the world. I think it's 132 odd regions around the world that come together at Climate Week. I mean, I did see the press statement by the ANC. I want to say that the reason they say it's not declared, I say here it is, it's declared. There's the income that came back post our visit. I'm sure the DG and the administration can speak to that specific donation. But there it is, it's declared. It's declared to the public via media, it's declared in a report to Cabinet, and it's declared in this document. Then I think she also spoke about other declarations. Of course, those are in our documents that we submit, and the gift register. Of course, this does not come to me. This goes to the government. So that's why the government is declaring it. I just attend as the chair for what's actually a co-chair for the African continent. And so the same thing would apply then to any member. And then, of course, if it's a gift directly to you, you have to declare it, and that will be in that gift register as part of the declarations. I already mentioned about the SAPS numbers. The MTBP medium-term development plan, that's the national strategy, and then obviously our PSP. And the honourable member asked about the alignment. Well, I know that, first of all, when we were producing our document, which we are required to put on table, and I tabled it, if you remember, at the opening of Parliament in Beaufort West. But in actual fact, the formation of that document started happening at the end of the previous term of office. The policy team in the Department of the Premier started producing the next term's PSP, started collating, and then as soon as the election was over, we then started working with national government and ourselves. And I know the Honourable Lecker wasn't there, but I know that the leaders of all of the political parties in this legislature were invited to the Beaufort West meeting, where the national department presented the MTDP plan, and we produced the PSP. That was the draft formation of it. That was in Beaufort West at a Premier's forum, where it was not only just invited to political parties and the whole cabinet, but it was all of the municipalities, all of the municipal managers from the whole province in that space. So that was the start of the real work in forming and the alignment of those two documents. And of course, that's where it was formed, and it comes through, and there's not 100% alignment, but perhaps I'll talk out of the Lekgotla that I've just come back from. And in the presentation at the Lekgotla, it's one of the questions I asked, because you can see all the reporting, and obviously that's the national cabinet reporting, each department's responsibilities, but nothing is said in those columns about the Premier, about the Premiers, the provinces. So it was one of the questions I've asked, and we've now brought those documents back. We'll be engaging and going back to national government to say we actually don't see alignment in these areas. And then, of course, there are other areas where there is not alignment. So it will not have a MINMEC. It won't have a concurrent power. And those are also areas that we've got to then specifically engage if it has an impact on us as a province. And then the Honourable Stevens, I think I have mentioned in the numbers. Of course, I like your suggestion of enabling more funding for LEAP. That is more in the next round of discussions when we go to adjustment budgets, and when we go to the new budget for the new year. Hopefully we do have more money. In South Africa at the moment, with a very, very slow growth, our budgets are under severe pressure, specifically education and health. But perhaps in those processes, we would welcome any motivation to see how we could get more funding, not only for LEAP. In actual fact, we need to get our fair share of funding for education and health primarily. Those are our big budget items. Then the safety net, which is social development. And then we all need to be arguing for more money for the South African Police Service at whatever platform we are on. As I've just said, I mean, they are so under-resourced and the crime levels are so high. And that's the primary front line of fighting crime, and then all of the other weaknesses, whether it's investigations, whether it's the criminal justice system, whether it's the the system, our incarceration system, our jails, which leak like a sieve, and they actually become the management centers. You've seen the call of late to ban cell phones in those spaces because of the linkage back to gangsterism and crime, and that we need actually the whole province to be standing together to motivate for more money for the South African Police Service and the whole criminal justice system. DG, I'll hand over to you.
Premier, thank you very much. I mean, you have responded to most of the issues. Maybe just to Member Bryant, and I'm sure Letitia, you can add. For the top employers, basically divided into 3 different categories. And as Premier has indicated, we've entered and we received certification for the last 3 years. In fact, as far as my knowledge goes, we're the first government that have actually received that certification, only to be followed last year by AXA, because what happens is that people put these things on their presentations, and that's a way of seeing it. But what it does, it actually measures you, with many other top companies, top brands across the world. And a lot of it at the moment is to do with your HR practices. So we've run this for the entire government. It's not only for the 11 departments. It included education. It included health. And in fact, it's an entire team that have worked tirelessly to pull this together. But it's a benchmark. So we've received certification for the country region for the last 3 years. And the next step is to move to blue certification, which is regional. And then ultimately, we want to enter into the global competition as our own systems matured. But we wanted to get a particular benchmark in relation to that. And it's something that the 90,000 staff of this government is very proud of, because, I mean, we can benchmark ourselves with the best. So what it does, it provides you with data-driven insights. Obviously, from a recognition perspective, once you put the certification or that red sticker on your presentations, it says something about you as an institution, and internationally you are recognized for that. It allows you to do some benchmarking. Obviously, there is a process of business alignment, so you can actually align some of your best practices, and particularly as the Western Cape government, whilst we're embarking on our culture journey, we can now start to we can actually start to compare some of our business practices, with some of the good practices that actually exist in some of these top employers, that is joined as part of this family. And as I've indicated, we are part of a global community that has been certified as top employers, and it gives you some recognition and visibility. And for me, given the role that we play transversely, it provides you with a platform, for continuous learning. So it is really something that I think this government can be proud of. And as I said, it's something that's been achieved by the entire system. And the next step is to move to blue, move to gold, and then we can really, be at the top in relation to our Western Cape government brand. The second issue around AI, I think, as Premier has indicated, and Member Bryant, I thought your page 44 refers actually to our APP document, where we actually set out our entire policy, starting obviously with good governance in place. So we've already gone to Cabinet. We've got approval for our AI policy, because obviously that's, Premier calls it the guardrails. It's how do you protect the system? How do you protect, citizens or residents of this province? I mean, imagine you go to a health facility, or you go to a education facility, and your information suddenly becomes kind of public. So how do we relate AI with some of the other requirements, particularly around POPIA? So there's a lot of work, and part of the work that we're doing under innovation, governance and culture is actually to institutionalize AI in this government, the use of AI in this government, but to use AI in a responsible way. And I mean, Zenith is driving that as part of program 2. On the staff matters on page 26 and 27, many of our positions have been filled. I mean, obviously, we are constrained by the financial environment. So if you look at the different programs, so where there's been vacancies within program 3, or the branch e-services, we have already filled the position for, I think, connected government buildings. I must just double check that. Then within legal services, the post for corporate legal advisory services, that's already been filled. Then within program 3, which is people management, the other one dealt with is program 4, actually, the one that I've mentioned earlier. Within the branch program management, we've already filled the position for the transversal work organization capacity. That's with an internal candidate. Then we've also filled the position for recruitment and selection. And then we've also filled the position within the branch corporate services senior manager for governance and administration. In fact, that's Babalwa that we've just introduced early on. And in fact, Chair, in terms of appointments, I think all these appointments except for one has been female. And we've really made good progress in relation to, even in our environment, particularly as it relates to gender. I think as a department, we've really made a lot of progress. So a lot of these vacancies have been filled, but as I said, we are still challenged. And then some of these positions we have decided not to fill, like the head corporate services for at this stage. All program managers reports to me as the AO, because we're working on the one department, obviously, because we've got core services, and it's only really the services within internal audit that's been, and also some HR services that's been provided on an agency basis. The others are core services of the Department of Premiums. At the moment, that's kind of how we work and operate in the department, and that makes us, more functional from where I'm sitting. Then the question from member Lekker on page 15 in relation to the donation. So, I mean, as an accounting officer, my role is to disclose any donation that comes to the department. So I want to indicate to this committee that, firstly, this donation is to the department. It's actually a donation to government. It's not to a person. It's not to the Premier. It's not to any of the staff members. So last year, the Premier embarked upon an official trip to the US in September as part of his responsibilities, as the co-chair for the Under 2 Coalition. And that was really to attend the New York Climate Week. And I want to make a couple of points. Firstly, this entire trip was paid by Western Cape government. No external institution paid any amounts in relation to this trip. We paid for it. We paid for the Premier. We paid for the officials to actually attend the New York climate week. The department was reimbursed with the price of an economy class ticket, but that was a reimbursement to government, because government has already paid for the ticket and all the expenditure, and then that money went back into the provincial revenue fund. So it was an amount paid, by the Under 2 Coalition to the department. So it's basically, as I said, a gift or payment to government. And I think more importantly, this payment was only received 6 months after the trip has actually been undertaken. And in fact, this payment was received on the 9th of April, 2025, which actually sits in this financial year. So from my perspective, I mean, I'm of the firm belief that we have disclosed the donation in the appropriate manner. It was also audited by the Auditor General, and we've disclosed it in our annual report. And no gift of sponsorship was received by the Premier in his personal capacity. That is also stated. And in fact, I mean, my understanding is that the Premier has submitted his declaration to Western Cape Parliament in February this year. And if you run the numbers, that was actually prior to us receiving the payment from the Under 2 Coalition. So I'm quite clear. There is no issue here, and the Under 2 Coalition is an important regional organization, and it deals with 183 countries. We are a partner region. A lot of the work happens within the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. Premier has taken over the co-chairpersonship from the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, and he's obviously responsible for actually the entire region, plus also South Africa. So this is an important role that the Premier, in his capacity as the Premier, actually plays as it relates to climate change and everything that goes towards it. So it's got nothing to do with him as Alan Windy, as in his personal capacity, but as I said, it is a donation that was duly declared, and it is a donation that was made to the department. And Chair, as you're well aware, we can pay for expenditures in different ways. I'm talking about general expenditure. You can pay it from the revenue fund. There's a section that deals with donations, or it can be funded, let's call it from national, maybe through a conditional grant or whatever. And sometimes, expenditures are funded through different sources, and that is why you make the disclosure in your annual report. And those documentation, comes to myself as the accounting officer, and I need to approve any donation that is made to government, and specifically that is made to the Department of the Premier. So hopefully this matter can be settled. As I've indicated, I think we've done what we had to do in relation to that. Then on the question by Minister Member Lekker on the alignment of the PSP and MDTP on page 8 and page 9, I think in my intro remarks, Chair, I have referred to the alignment. In fact, we've done a lot of work as Western Cape government to make sure that there is alignment, and to demonstrate it, as I've indicated, is that the National Development Plan basically has got 3 legs. It deals with the issue around growing the economy, and that is basically what it's premised upon. And then the second leg basically deals with the services that government provides under education, health, social development, and that deals with reducing poverty. And then the third part deals with building a capable state. Given all the governance challenges that we've got in the country, there is a focus on building a capable state. If you take our plan and you superimpose it, we've got a number 1 priority. It's around growth for jobs. We believe our OPEX priority is growing the economy, and obviously getting people to be educated so that they can take up those jobs. So our number 1 priority is to grow the economy. So we've got a growth for job strategy, which I've already explained during the earlier sessions. That aligns to the MDP's strategy of also growing the economy. Then we've got a strategy that deals with education, health, and social development. That deals directly with the strategy that's in the MDDP around reducing poverty, and making sure that people have got access to services. Then the third part of our strategy deals with safety. In fact, our decision was to actually have a specific strategy to deal with safety, but that also deals with addressing the issue under the second part of the MDDP. And then our fourth element deals with innovation, governance, and also the whole issue around improving governance in the system, and that deals with building a capable and ethical state, and there are many initiatives around it. So if one asks the question around whether there's alignment, I can confirm that there is full alignment to that. So Chair, I think those addresses the issues. The Premier has responded to Member Stevens in relation to LEAP. I just need to check with Letitia if there's anything she would like to say on particularly the issue around the top employer, and then Zenit, if there's anything that you would like to say on AI.
Thank you. I will speak about the top employer. So just in terms of the top employer, it's quite massive. There's about 255 questions that we have to ask and also upload evidence. The domains that they look at is steer. In terms of steer, they specifically look at our business strategy, our people strategy, our leadership. Then we also have unite. They specifically look at our purpose and values, our ethics, integrity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And shape, they look at our culture and our organization, digital HR and work environment. With attract, they specifically look at employee branding, talent acquisition, onboarding, how we develop our employees, and specifically in terms of engagement, our well-being, how do we listen and how do we do reward and recognition. Our highest scoring for the province was in ethics and integrity, our people strategy and culture, performance and well-being. Our greatest improvement from the last survey was employer branding, diversity, equity, and inclusion, employee listening, rewarding and recognition, and offboarding. We're still awaiting our latest results, which we'll know by end of November. Thank you.
So thank you, members, for the question. We have taken our governance policy framework for AI. We have taken our governance policy framework for AI to Cabinet. It actually went to Cabinet at a time where National has a draft governance policy framework for AI. What's interesting in the framework that we are actually positioning it is that it it positions the governance of data and the governance of AI in the sense of the deployment and the use of AI. But it's also not prescriptive. The framework, while it governs the use of AI, it promotes the adherence of robust and advisory, regulatory, and legal context, but also it's a guide for departments to use in their specific sector context. Very importantly, it has standards, 6 key standards. It has key principles, and it has structures. So those 3 together is the recipe for successful deployment in AI. Very importantly, we did not reinvent the wheel. We did not introduce new structures. We looked at what we have in place and then augmenting those structures for AI deployment and the involvement of these emerging technologies. Thank you.
Okay, so it's concluded. I thought for a moment, I misheard you. I thought for a moment you wanted to make another input. Okay, colleagues, there's a second round of questions. I see Member Heron.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go back to the DG's explanation of the under 2 coalition trip. The way the DG has described it is different to how it's described in the report. The way it's described in the report, in my view, does trigger the Executive Ethics Act and Code's obligation to declare this in the members or the Premier's personal declaration, covering the costs of an economy class ticket for Premier Windy. So the way that the DG's described it now is that this was actually a reimbursement of part of the costs that the whole department incurred. The description here doesn't match the way you've described it now. So either we have to amend this so that it's accurate, or the Premier has a problem with his declaration in terms of the Executive Ethics Act. Thank you.
I do not see any hands, so if you can respond to that, and then I think we'll be in a position to move on to the next section.
Chairperson, I've got a follow-up. My hand is raised.
Just hang on. I missed your hand. The procedural officer just indicated to me you had your hand up. Member Lekker.
Thank you, Chair. Let me indeed appreciate the responses that we have received, but as Member Heron has alluded, what has been written on our document is not what the explanation that the DG has given to us, and I think that needs to be corrected, because indeed, if it's written in that way, then we're going to have serious questions about it. But also, I want to speak through you to you, Chair. You see, it is dangerous for a chairperson of a committee to take a position and want to tell us when we're doing oversight how we must do it. And I want to take you straight, Chairperson, to how oversight is being done and how declarations are made by members of parliament. And I think if you can understand that one, tomorrow you won't attempt to caution us when we're doing an oversight. Because clearly, a member in the legislature is by right not limited to ask questions, particularly when it comes to declaration. And such is not only limited to the registrar's office. So you need to be careful of protecting what needs not to be protected. But as part of a follow-up also, which I would have wanted to ask Chairperson around the responses that we have received, would be that if you're looking at these responses, particularly on the alignment, the Premier says they are not 100% aligned. And I want to ask if there is not 100% align of the MTDP, I want to ask, as and when such is being made, is this House going to be afforded an opportunity to be given a feedback as to how far the process of alignment has come up since there has been some of the issues not being aligned to? And then lastly, Chair, would be that if the declarations were done in the previous annual report, why are we seeing it now? Because for me, I would not have asked it if it was done previously, not unless there's a particular way of doing it. I think I must pause there for now. Thank you.
Member Lecker, let me just respond to you. I believe it's entirely appropriate for the chairperson to point out in the meeting that we, as per the agenda item, dealing with an annual report. And in fact, if you go back to my phrasing, my cautioning was actually a kind way of reminding the meeting why we are here, and yet I allowed the questions. So I would actually say my wording, particularly in the context of that meeting, was particularly inclusive. But you're happy to disagree with me, and if you believe that there's anything wrong in how I responded, by all means take it further through the processes of the party. I, however, will not engage in a fight as to whether the department is getting protected or not. That I don't believe is the framing applicable in this meeting. In fact, we are asking pertinent questions, including yours, to the department, which the department needs to respond to. So just to recap, there's a question of phrasing that Member Heron was asking, and then also the questions by Member Lecker. If you can, I'm handing over to you for response.
Chair, no, I'm comfortable to provide this one because I mean I made this declaration as the accounting officer for this department. I mean I'm definitely convinced that the way that we've disclosed it is correct. I mean this was not to the Premier in his personal capacity, and I believe the issue around declaration deals, with gives the nation stuff in his personal capacity. This was covering the cost of an economy class ticket for the under 2 coalition chairperson. That is what they've actually reimbursed us. It is in this report because the donation was approved in this financial year 24-2025. That is why we've disclosed it. However, the payment from them, or the reimbursement from them, only happened in the new financial year. So in fact, Premier would not even have been aware at the time that he made the declaration in February that this payment came to the department. And as I've said, this is a donation to the state. And we received many of these kind of donations. So as an example, if somebody go and attend a conference, whether it's in Joburg, whatever, sometimes they can get sponsored. And if they get sponsored, I disclose it. So whether it is an official or whether it is the specific person, I disclose it in the annual report. And as I've said, this has got nothing to do with the Premier in his personal capacity. So covering the cost of an economy class ticket for Premier Windy, and I mean I could have even said, to the chair of the under 2 coalition, to remove the name of the person, but we wanted to be transparent. That is why we mentioned it. You can see even in the others, we would even mention, specific unit, an official in CI or an official in another program, because there is nothing to hide, because this was a reimbursement to the Western Cape government. I think the key thing here is, if you go back to the record, Western Cape government actually paid for the entire trip. The Premier was on the trip, they paid for that. There were officials, Western Cape government paid for that. The reimbursement came back to Western Cape government and it was paid into the Provincial Revenue Fund. So the Provincial Revenue Fund is the recipient of this and not the Premier in his personal capacity. As I've indicated, even the payment itself came in the new financial year. And in this year, when you look at our statements for 25-26, you will see under the revenue component that an amount of 51,000 would go in there. So that is, Chair, what it is, and that is how we've disclosed it, and I believe it is the correct way of disclosing it. And as I said, the AG also looked at it. So we don't want to hide anything, but it's got nothing to do with the Premier. And I've looked at the code also myself as the accounting officer. That code deals with, gives information, to you as a person, as a member of the legislature, and if needed. I mean, if we need to get more clarity potentially on this matter, because obviously this is a matter that can come up in future, I actually think that the legislatures should get clarity on it, because there are many members of parliament, because remember, you also sit in a vote. So what if somebody sponsors a trip to a member of parliament that sits basically in that vote? How do you deal with it? And I think we should get clarity once and for all on it, so that we don't get into this space and it becomes a debate whether something should have been disclosed or not. The Premier, in his personal capacity, had no benefit from this trip. In fact, Chair, I always say, even if they didn't pay the money, the 51,000, we actually incurred the expenditure already, and we would have paid it anyway from the state coffers. It was basically a reimbursement into the revenue fund. That's it. I've got nothing more to say on it.
Member Bryant.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, I think it's also very important for us to consider the position the Western Cape finds itself in when it comes to climate change. And we've seen the devastating impacts of wildfires, floods, torrential rainfall, all of these things that are really becoming day-to-day issues, whether it be winter or the summer seasons. We've been through day zero. We've had numerous crises. And the importance of attending such an event, representing the province, I think can't be overemphasized enough. It really is something that I think puts us in good stead as a province, to show that we are not only leading the way, but we are also there to learn and to ourselves give guidance to other members of the global community. As noted right at the beginning, Dr. Malila, we have received as a province, your department has received a clean audit, almost 95.5% performance targets. I mean, was the issue that's being spoken of raised at all by the Auditor General as a red flag? Because I didn't pick that up. So I think it's important just to gather that, and just if you can just give us confirmation on that. And I suppose my one just last little follow-up question in terms of AI. You've spoken about this concept of public information being disseminated through the use of AI. Can you just expand a little bit in terms of the safeguards that the province is putting in place when it comes to public information that the province holds? Because obviously the province does have access to public information of residents. Thank you.
Right. I saw some member here, and I saw your hand as well. Okay, and colleagues, then after this, we need to also move on to the next section, and then member Boyson. Member Heron.
No, thanks, Chair. I really didn't want to belabor the point, and I thought I'd help the DG, but he actually just made it worse. Because he started out by explaining in response to Member Lecker, that this was not a sponsorship of a trip for the Premier. And now he's saying it was a sponsored trip for the Premier in his capacity as the chair of this, or I've forgotten what it's called, the coalition. So the Executive Ethics Act is clear, and it's got nothing to do with a clean audit or anything. The way it's described in here is not how the DG first answered Member Lecker. Then I suggested that this wording is inaccurate, and now the DG said it actually was a sponsored trip for the Premier in his capacity as the chair of this. and therefore does trigger the Executive Ethics Act's duty to disclose. It's got nothing to do with this report. It's got nothing to do with the AG. You've just created an obligation on the Premier to make a disclosure, in my view. And I think that when I gave you the opportunity to say, well, this wording is wrong, I think you made it worse.
First one to give, there was another hand there by Member Boyson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I think our challenge sits with inconsistency in terms of raising and flagging these matters. And I've gone through this, and there is more than 4 donations for trips. And I think the difference here is because the Premier has been mentioned, you know, and there are other officials and people who've been traveling via donations, their costs were covered and whatever, and we're not raising issues on that because, as I was saying, Premier, you're the biggest tree, so obviously we're gonna come for you. But I understand this, Chairperson. An annual report is a disclosure as a process of government. So that is a disclosure, and it is a disclosure not just to us, but to the public as well. It's an annual report. Now, Chairperson, my question would be to the DG. The media triggered this. Somebody put this into the media. Now, my question would be, Chairperson, did the media contact the DG's office? Because this thing needs to be rebutted in terms of the narrative that has been put out there by probably one of our colleagues. But we now understand what happened. But surely the narrative is out there. What I don't know is whether the department would then put the record straight, because there is a narrative now out there. Thank you, Chair.
Colleagues, I would like to suggest a way forward, because on the one hand, there's obviously a political narrative, and I don't want the committee to become essentially a debate about what's out there in the media. So I'm going to allow the Premier the opportunity to respond. But I think my view is, and I think Member Heron questioned the wording and whether that triggers any further concerns in terms of declarations. To me, that's very simple. We get a legal opinion. It is actually as a way forward. And then we can determine whether what the appropriate course of action is there. But colleagues, what I would be concerned about is that we spend the rest of the meeting debating essentially a press statement when we have an annual report to deal with. Over to the Premier.
Chair, sorry, with all due respect, I don't think a legal opinion is necessary. I think what we need to do, I don't think we need to change the wording here. I think what we need to do is set up an official meeting between the registrar, and I'll join the meeting, and the DG and the legal team, and say, this is how it's interpreted for declaration. I'll meet with the registrar and say, tell us what you think.
Let me call it professional process. Perhaps legal opinion wasn't the correct. Speaking of terminology, not the correct terminology. Colleagues, can we proceed to part B of the annual report? Sorry, was there another? There's some, the AI, my apologies, Member Bryant. Over to you.
I'll be brief.
I don't understand it. That's why I missed the significance.
No, we did say that that the AI policy is written in such a way to harness the benefits of AI technology, very much so that it doesn't harmfully impact our residents. Right. If you look at our standards, you'll see the environment that we focus on environmental sustainability as also societal impact, and very much that it remains human-centric and oversight. If you look at, I think we need to perhaps share our governance policy framework with the committee, and there's an annexure that speaks about the regulatory landscape. The framework was written not in the absence of international regulatory environment, and the national context. Suffice to say, when it comes to data that's in the public domain, we do not overlook. We have the POPIA, we have PAIA, and so we have also in a provincial context, you look at our governance policy framework, we have in place an open data policy, and we also have guardrails for AI, and very much practice notes and guidelines to be still to be put in place and add to our existing basket of practice notes on how to use data with care. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, Member Lekker.
I just want to check, Chairperson, are we now on part B or we're still continuing with part A?
About to move on to part B. So we're moving on to part B now. Colleagues, part B, what we're going to, just in terms of, because that's quite a long section. So if you look at your content table in the beginning, let's take section 2, the overview of departmental performance. So it's pages 30 to 42 as the first section that we'll deal with. Then we'll move to the institutional program performance information, part 4, and then parts 5, 6, 7, and 8 we can deal with together as a third section for part B. So, so let's start with the first section of part B. In other words, pages 30 to, 28 to 42. And again, if I can ask you to just reference the page number when you ask your questions. We have a first session of 5 minutes each. We have a follow-up session. And if there's a stretch, a really burning issue like we had previously, we can allow a bit of extra discussion. But colleagues, it's essentially a two-phase process. Initial questions with a second set of questions. I was more lenient on the department time-wise in the beginning because it's an introductory sort of overview type of section of the annual report. But if I can also ask the department to be a little bit more pointed as well, we do have a generous time, but time tends to get less generous. The less disciplined you are as you proceed in a meeting. So let's go to part B. The first section of part B, pages 28 to 42, to the members. If I can take hands on that first section and remember to reference the page number. I see Member Lekker. I do not see any other hands in the house. Member Lekker.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, let me apologize in advance. Sometimes when you're working on something that is not entirely yours, you tend to do what I did. And I did not reference my pages on my questions. So I'm apologizing in advance. But all my questions would be limited on the performance. Chair, my first question would be on the annual report highlights. What measurable job creation or investment outcomes were realized through these frameworks during 24-25? And then given the 1 trillion economy target for 2025, which remains unmet, what corrective measures or revised economic targets has the Premier or the Department of the Premier adopted, not the Premier alone? My apologies for that. And then how did the Department of the Premier ensure alignment between MTDP priorities and the departmental performance targets across the Western Cape government? And lastly, what systems are in place to monitor and enforce accountability for the implementation of the provincial strategic plan across the departments? Thank you.
So this is performance related in the end. Any other questions? I don't see any hands. Over to the department.
Chair, thank you very much. I can deal with this quite quickly. So in relation to the systems in place to monitor the implementation, I mean, we've got the PSP implementation plan, which we have highlighted during our previous discussion. That plan actually monitors the implementation of the PSP across the 4 key priority areas. In fact, the entire top management plus cabinet just came out of a 2-day session last weekend, Thursday and Friday, where we actually discussed the PSP across the 4 areas. And also we discussed what are some of the risks, what is the current performance. And that's also another way of measuring it. And then thirdly, there are continuous quarterly reporting to Provincial Cabinet on the implementation of the PSP across the 4 areas. And obviously when government also have their quarterly board discussions, the PSP is actually on the discussion. So even up to the agendas at cabinet level, that is how we monitor it. There are HOD leads that's been appointed, across the 4 areas, taking responsibility for the entire system. On the alignment of the PSP, in addition to what I've said previously, alignment of the PSP to the medium-term development plan, we've also done internal assessments per department in relation to the APP and also the 5-year SP as to how the APPs are aligned to firstly our own PSP and also aligned to the national development plan. So we are quite satisfied that there is alignment. We will also pick up any issues of misalignment at the upcoming budget departmental discussions, which is scheduled for the last week in October. The team also are doing annual APP reviews, obviously for compliance and for conformance and also alignment issues. And if there are any issues of non-alignment, we will then bring it through the adjustment estimate process, which happens November every year. Chair, in relation to the job creation initiatives, that all sits in the Growth for Jobs strategy. Our initial plan is to create 600,000 jobs to grow the economy between 3 and 5%, but to enable the private sector to create those jobs. That's up until 2035. So we haven't revised any of our targets up until 25. Those commitments that's been made in the PSP. Then we've got medium-term targets, Chair, that sits in the G4J plan. That's up until 2030. Given obviously where the national economy is going, not even growing at 1%, our medium targets have been adjusted accordingly, but we haven't adjusted our targets up until 2035. So if you look at the G4J plan, that is a plan up until 2035. Set to grow the economy between 3 and 5% and to create 600,000 additional jobs across the different sectors. I hope that answers all the questions from Member Lekker. Thank you.
Colleagues, any additional questions? Member Lekker, is that your hand up?
It's a follow-up, Chair.
Okay, go for it.
No, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the response, DG. I want to check from your side, particularly when it comes to what you referred to as the reviews, and if there will be any issues that this will be brought into the adjustment process. I want, and also you said the systems are in place in the alignment and also to implement and evaluate the outcomes. Just a quick one, Chair, is to request if maybe we can be given an eye to see as to if these evaluations have been made, what probably has been the discoveries that has been picked up as a result of checking whether these systems are in place and properly implemented. Can we perhaps be given an eye to see? Because I'm speaking from a position of not knowing. I think the response from the department is limited to a point that for me, I don't understand, or I would want to know further as to what has been the findings on these evaluations. Thank you.
Over to you.
Chair, I mean, I've got no issue, to talk about some of those things that we found. But Chair, you will remember in our previous committee session when we spoke about the PSP and the PSP implementation plan, we gave a commitment to this committee that we are open to be called, whether it's on a quarterly basis, 6-monthly basis, to come and brief the committee on the extent to which we are implementing the PSP. So that's one thing that we are open to do. The second issue is that, Chair, you will know that on a quarterly basis, this government through the Budget Committee, and I don't know whether Member Lekker sits on the Budget Committee, actually reports to Parliament on the performance of this government on a quarterly basis, whether it is financial or non-financial. What we've done this year, we have now introduced an additional step where we're now linking the financial performance and the non-financial performance to some impact indicators. And what we want to do as part of the new process is to start to align those impact indicators to what it is that we want to achieve on the PSP. So we are open to come and brief the committee, or Chair, if you wish us to come and brief the Budget Committee, which consists out of all the chairs, and anybody can actually join the Budget Committee. We are also open to do that. Some of the technical adjustments and the technical changes will come through the November adjusted estimate process. In fact, I'm about to sign a circular to all departments. We're guiding them on how they need to amend their different APP. So there's a particular process, and we've aligned it to what's been said by the DPME. And during that process, members will also have an opportunity to actually interrogate some of those changes that will come through the APP, particularly in relation to the indicators, the normal performance indicators, and more specifically how they link to ultimately what it is that we want to achieve. So, Chair, if the committee wishes to call us on a quarterly or 6-monthly basis to come and talk about the PSP implementation, we can gladly do so, because I said from government side, particularly where the Premier sits, because the Auditor General have placed, that additional responsibility on the coordinating ministries to obviously, guide departments in relation to implementing the PSP, the budgets, the APP, etc. So we are open to come and brief the committee anytime.
Right, colleagues, I do not see any urgent issues or urgent last hands. So that was the follow-ups. We move on to the second section of Part B, the institutional program performance information. That is from pages 42 to 103. This is the exciting parts of the annual report. And Member Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on page 50. It starts with connected government and sound ICT governance. And it's specifically relating to the e-centers. And as a political head allocated to the area, I travel throughout the Central Karoo on quite a regular basis. And I must say that in every single small town that you go, even as small as Klaarstrom, you will find a e-center. And I think the e-centers are doing much more than what they were initially started for. And I can see the queues at all of these centers. And I know specifically in the rural areas, there's the access to computers and internet and printers is quite limited. So we do recognize the extremely important role that e-centers play within the specifically in the rural districts. But I am a bit concerned in terms of the obviously the department spends a great amount of funding on these on this initiative, but I am a bit concerned in terms of the management of these centers, specifically in the rural areas. And I do think as these centers play a critical role, I have seen some of these centers in terms of the physical infrastructure of buildings, which might be the responsibility of the local authorities, or the equipment itself might not be in the best of condition. And I think we don't want to reach a state where people visit the center and there's limited computers that actually work. And I don't think it's a good reflection on the department. I'm just curious to find out whether there is a sort of line manager or district manager responsible for doing these sort of checkups? And then just in terms of, I've seen the mobile e-centers move around as well. I'm just curious to find out how many of these mobile e-centers we actually have within the province. Thank you very much.
I have a difficulty seeing the screen there. Are there any online hands up? Member Lekker. Member Lekker.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I want to actually start from where the last member spoke to. And indeed, this has been my observations in the rural areas. And this brings me to a question, Chair, that exactly what progress has been made, particularly to expand the broadband access to informal settlement and other underserved rural areas during this financial year. Because from the quality of the machines that I've seen, it made me wonder if this is such quality that we provide for the rural areas, what then happens to the informal settlements and those other areas that you find in the West Coast area. And then the second one, Chair, would be around the progress that has been made on the broadband 2.0 rollout and cybersecurity initiatives, and whether there were any cyber incidents that has been recorded thus far. Then, Chair, also the report states that about 6.6 million citizens accessed the Western Cape digital services. And my question, therefore, as I ask, how many are unique users and what proportion comes from low income or rural communities? And then maybe my last question, Chair, as I would be waiting for follow-up, would be how does the Department of the Premier measure digital inclusion to ensure technology-based services do not entrench inequalities? Thank you.
I do not see any other hands. Over to the department.
Chair, thank you very much. Obviously, I'm going to ask Ikshan also to come in. So, Chair, I mean, the issue around rural connectivity, remains a major concern for this department. In fact, we spoke about it on Thursday and Friday. And in fact, I'm sure Ikshan will talk about it. The shift between broadband 1.0 and 2.0 actually allows for an improvement in digital connectivity, particularly as it relates to rural communities. Obviously, Chair, given the distances and the areas that needs to be covered, I mean, it comes at an enormous cost, but that shouldn't be the only factor, that keeps us away from obviously making sure that our rural communities also have connectivity. So the one initiative that we've embarked upon to spread our wings in relation to building connectivity in the rural areas is actually our e-bus. And we've launched that, I think it was sometime last year, just before the building collapse in George. And in fact, Chair, we can provide this committee with a full report as to the areas that this e-bus have actually covered. But the big purpose was actually to give connectivity to people within rural communities. So you can see this bus, and I'm sure Member Johnson have seen the bus in some of the rural communities. It is really there, to help our rural citizens to get access to particularly packages, to give them access to connectivity, and actually to give them access to the global environment. And in fact, Chair, if you think about what we're doing in the space, it's not only the e-centers. We've got broadband connectivity at close to 2,000 Western Cape government sites, 1,914 we've reported. In addition to that, Chair, where we directly interface with the public, is 1,600 public Wi-Fi hotspots. So it's not only the e-centers. And when we started the e-center concept, it was actually, to go out into more our rural communities and to try and cover it. And what we're doing is obviously a lot of the buildings and stuff where the e-centers are situated, actually, we're sharing it either with the Tusang Center or we're sharing it as part of a building that belongs to the municipality. And in many cases, we're also sharing it, with a library. And most of those buildings belong, to municipalities, but we have managers, that actually looks after each of the different regions in relation to the services. And then between Prima, myself, and Sean, we now and then visit these e-centers to look at obviously what's going on, doing some spot checks and to making sure that that we provide excellent services. So the matter that's been raised by Member Johnson, we will definitely take it into our work. Maybe engage with some of the municipalities to see to what extent can we up, particularly the physical condition of some of these centers. But I think overall, the quality of our e-centers are actually in a very, very good state. That's the general issue, and maybe there's one or two that we need to see to, and we have got no issue, to do that. Obviously, and I spoke on the issue around the rural areas, and I would like Sean to indicate, to talk to that. In relation to cyber security, that remains an issue throughout the world. So on page 51, we've given you just a snapshot as to what is happening in that space. And in fact, what we've done, and we've received funding from the Treasury for that, for upping our game on it. We've actually implemented a comprehensive matured cybersecurity program. And what we've done was firstly to safeguard, obviously, our infrastructure. And then, in terms of the monitoring of our website, what's going on, because that is actually what's happening. Somebody infiltrate your system, and then suddenly they place, some funny stuff on there, and then you need to pay some ransomware to the tunes of millions, because obviously it's information of people. So we've been able to block about 330,000 emails in the system, and then there were also issues around websites, that we've actually, sort of, I don't want to call it infiltrated, but we've actually watched that they should not put on any sort of harmful or malicious content, and all those things were actually blocked. So sometimes people would come and they would try to get into your system, and what the team is also doing, there's continuous training. So we've got our email that goes to all staff. We would put some exercises on it, because obviously phishing is a big thing currently, particularly on our email system. And those are ways to also alert staff to be mindful about getting these funny phishing emails, and then they use it as a way to actually get into our broader system. So this is an investment that we've made, but I'm sure Sean can talk about it. And then, Chair, I can give the commitment that our focus is on broadening our access, particularly to rural areas. And, given our budget environment, we will see to what extent we can improve our footprint, so that citizens or residents in this province can actually have access. Pim, you want to come in, and then Sean? I don't know. Oh, Sean?
Thank you, DG. So I think just the first point around visiting the sites, I think besides ourselves visiting, we do have a structure where we've got a manager and 2 support staff visiting those sites as well. If needed, I can give the member the name of the manager for the e-centers from our side, just to check on the site visits and which site specifically. At the end of the last financial year, we made a significant investment in the infrastructure refresh, specifically the technical infrastructure. That is ongoing. So that happened in about February, March this year, but that's ongoing as well. So again, if there are any issues around that, yes, the member can then just send it through to us. In terms of the rural and informal settlements, in terms of broadband, we've got 350 additional sites that we're rolling out as part of Broadband 2.0. We can give the members the list of those sites. It's primarily schools, but there are other couple of sites as well. And then in terms of ensuring that we do not exclude the communities without access to digital infrastructure. Besides the e-centers, we're piloting a new project called the digital e-kiosks. And the intent is really to put that e-kiosk at the frontline service delivery point. So that when the citizens or residents do come to visit for something else, they can access the e-services. For instance, if it is time for school applications, they can do that online as well. We're piloting it at a few libraries, and those libraries are in Beaufort West, Esseke, Caledon, George, Machikama, and Cape Agulhas, and then also a few museum sites, Genadendal Mission Museum, Ouderkerk Museum in Tolbach, and the Beaufort West Museum as well. And the intent really is to take that, if it works, it's a pilot. If it works, to take that into the rural and the poorer communities as well. And then just finally, in terms of the number of unique visits to the digital services, I will get that information through to the members. But in terms of cybersecurity, we as the Western Cape government did not have any serious cyber incidents on our network. One of the other departments did, but that was a third-party hosted service provider, and we managed to assist the department to then get those services up and running again. Thanks. Yeah, no, I did say, DJ, that we've got 350 additional sites, and I can give the members a list of those sites.
Over to you.
And I was just going to add that, I mean, the Honourable Lekker asked about, the specifically, is this targeting specifically poorer people? Are they getting access? And I think a really nice tool is to use the GIS map of these sites. So if you just Google Western Cape Government Wi-Fi, you'll see on that page a map. You can go onto the map and you can see exactly where those Wi-Fi hotspots are. So, for example, if you zoom into Beaufort West, you'll see there are 25 Wi-Fi hotspots in Beaufort West. I'm on Khayelitsha at the moment, and without counting them, there must at least be 35. So you can actually zoom in, and then you can go right into that ward. Is there a Wi-Fi hotspot within that ward? It's a very handy tool.
Just perhaps a follow-on in that same vein, a follow-up from my side in terms of the users of it. Perhaps do you obtain user information? Do you, in a sense, profile the customer, the users of the e-centers? Is there a system in place there? Because I think that would be incredibly useful to expand it and to understand what people find appealing, to get the uptake of the e-centers up. We want as many people as possible to use them, and we want a certain information technology mindset going forward. Perhaps if you can just speak to that as well, I would be very interested. Thanks.
Maybe you can speak to that, but Chair, we do have data on who visits our websites, our e-centers on a daily basis. Also, information on what they are looking for. A lot of them also come to do research projects for schools. There's a lot of activity in that space. I don't know, Sean, if there are any others. I mean, we could also supply that information to you, Chair, in a kind of a table form if needed.
Yeah, no, maybe just to add, Chair, that every user that visits the e-center registered. We're busy implementing a system, automated system for that. We piloted it last year, and out of that, we also learned something because we wanted people to use their phone number to register. And we found out that a lot of people in the rural areas don't actually have a phone. And therefore, the e-center manager would then use their phone number to register the people as well. So that's part of the learnings that we have. But we do have the list of the people that visit us every day. Obviously, that information is personal information. We cannot share that, but we can share the numbers in terms of the people.
Okay. I remember when the first pilot was rolled out, and for me, when you looked at what was searched, it was for jobs. It was education programs where there was, as Dee says, research for school project and then it was interesting. I don't know what the data says now, but health questions was quite a high up in rural areas. And then when you interrogate it, you say, but so why is someone asking about health questions? And of course, and I remember this one because it was in remember Boyson, what's the town up behind Wilderness? It's above Wilderness. Wilderness. It was at George. Anyway, mainly it's a rural, mainly farming community, and the questions on health. Why would you ask questions about health? And it's because you're going to lose your last money in a taxi to get to a clinic. and if you could get an answer without spending that money. But then, of course, that raises a whole lot of questions, because you don't want Google to be solving your problem, because Google's not a doctor. Maybe today it's but much better than it was then in the pilot. But that also then gives you data that you can use within your departments as to what people are looking for. But if it was just education, you go like, wow, this is exactly what it's for. Not for movies.
I think there's a fascinating discussion just there. Unfortunately, I need to caution myself that we are here to deal with the annual report. Colleagues, the last section of Part B, I can ask that is, let me just get back to my notes. It is pages 108 to 108 to 114. Any comments, any questions there? Right, I don't see any hands. Colleagues, Part C is normally what SCOPA deals with. That it forms part of that section. So normally in the committee, that's not in itself, in the actual standing committee, it's not a major discussion point. But for the sake of completeness, any points on Part C? Anyone who wants to raise anything on Part C? Again, I don't see any hands. Then Part D. Colleagues, any hands? That's pages 148 to 193. Any questions from the members? Any hands there? I do not see any hands. Then colleagues, then Part E and Part F, again, that is usually it's also it's financial information, it's the detail of it. In my past experience, there's not a tremendous amount of interest by members. It's also more dealt with in a different committee mostly. But again, for the sake of completeness, any questions to the department there? That's pages 194 to the end of the document. Is that a hand there on lunch? There's a glare from us. Member Lekker?
Yes, it's a new hand, Chair. Can I come in?
Apologies, Member Lekker. There's a glare on the screen, and I clearly struggle to see you, but you're not somebody that can be missed regardless. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, mine is around the health, safety, and environmental management. Just a quick one. The report has got about 11 formal and informal OHS incidents, but none of those resulted in serious injury. Can maybe the department provide a breakdown of the types of incident and whether there were any corrective actions implemented to prevent the reoccurrence of these? And how does the department ensure that the OHS committee maintains compliance with the OHS Act? Then the department also held about 17 safety and security awareness sessions during the year. What evaluation tools were used to assess the impact of these interventions on employee safety behavior? And what is the budget allocation which was made for training and compliance? And does the department consider this sufficient for the scale of its risk to exposure? Thank you.
Yeah, colleagues, we actually went through the document. Look, I'm going to allow because I don't want anyone to feel excluded, but clearly the parts that we were dealt with that are asked for inputs and then we moved on, we're going back there. Can I ask again, but I don't want to be so rigid to say we already covered the territory, therefore hold your peace. I'm going to allow, for the sake of completion, any other questions that members might have? We just went to part C. There were no questions there. Then I went through part D. There was no questions there. And then the rest of the document, part E and F, I put to the committee, and there were no questions there. But because I am not here to be overly pedantic, I'm going to ask then, are there any questions left by members that they have to ask? We have Member Lekker's questions now. Member Heron, I see your hand.
Sorry, Chair, I was a bit lost as to where we were, but I'm in part E, page 205. I just want to understand the extension of contracts to Quantum Leap Consulting. As I understand, Quantum Leap Consulting, the Provincial Forensic Services, found that they had been awarded contracts through corruption, for want of a better word. The department litigated with them, and the court ordered the province to honor the contracts that were awarded in 2019 or 2020. But I'm just surprised to see that we've extended those contracts given the history. So can we just get an understanding of the relationship with Quantum Leap Consulting given the litigation and the Provincial Forensic Services investigation?
Colleagues, any other questions? So we're in our last round. I just want to stress that. Any other questions by members? Right, over to the department.
Chair, I'm going to just deal with the OHS matters. Obviously, this is an important committee, and this committee resorts under the leadership of the CFO and as part of our corporate services. You can see that we've had many initiatives. We do not compromise on the safety of our staff. That's one thing that we are clear about. And in fact, Chair, in addition to what's written here, even at the PTM level, in our engagements with organized labor, that's one thing that we actually take very serious. Obviously, safety security has been monitored on a day-to-day basis. Training is covered in the department, either through our newsletters or also through e-learning platforms, and it can be on any particular matters around safeguarding of assets, what to do with your laptops, what is it that you need to do in terms of the general safety. This team also reports into our departmental EXCO, and obviously if there's any matter surrounding safety, we try and deal with it immediately. And you can see, Chair, there's a substantial amount of people that have actually participated in training and also refresh training on an annual basis. So this is something that we are acutely aware of and that we are actually looking at through our EXCO discussions. I mean, the matter on Quantum Leap has been coming on for some time, and I'm going to ask Lucas maybe just to respond to the stuff. I mean, I know there is a history to it, but Lucas, if you maybe just want to just deal with that.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, I think I speak under correction. I can't really recall. This is quite some time back, but I know there was some fraud or dishonesty, and maybe Ritvin can also come in from the provincial forensic side, which I believe was reported to SAPS. But as again, I haven't looked at this thing in a while. But essentially, we advised the DG as legal services that he was entitled to. In fact, he ought to cancel the contracts that existed with Quantum Leap at the time, based on the findings of the forensic investigation. That was duly challenged by Quantum Leap when the Director General then cancelled those contracts. It was about 2 years ago, if I recall correctly. The court held against us in the sense that what we relied on was alleged corruption that dated back to the previous contract. So what the court said was you cannot, so what the court said, you cannot hold what happened in a previous contract against a service provider when you're dealing with the new contract. So we couldn't rely on the old stuff in order to cancel the new stuff. So we got biffed. We weren't entirely convinced by all of the reasoning of the court, but it was agreed that, on a balance, the better decision was not to appeal the judgment. And of course, there is nothing that that precludes the service provider under those circumstances from participating in tenders. Just like there's nothing that precludes the department then from extending those contracts. In law, essentially, I mean, the court held against us and found that the decision to cancel those contracts was not legally valid. So, I mean, I don't know, Redwin? Maybe I forget a little bit what the issue was around the relationship with the supplier.
Well, Chairperson, I can just confirm that the criminal matter is still ongoing, so it has not been concluded yet.
Okay, I don't see anyone else responding. Right. Follow-up questions. Last round of follow-up questions. Okay, I see no hands. Colleagues, that then concludes the committee's interaction with the department. Now we would like to see, I did not receive any requests beforehand. Just want to check, we are now where, in the section in the agenda where members of the public can request to make an input, the public hearing component. I did not receive any written input or written requests. I just want to check, are there any members of the public present? Okay, gone. Then I would like to thank the department and the Premier for your interaction and your inputs here. Just from my side, I think it's the committee's job to interrogate everything in the document. But it is, I think, as I think provincialism is starting to rub off on me, but it is, again, in stark contrast to what I saw elsewhere in government, that what we consider problems and what we put energy into fixing, I think other parts of the country would dream of a situation like that. So I think that's very it's commendable, the clean audit, commendable the performance targets. Having said that, part of one can always improve. I think it's the job of the committee to find what goes wrong and give you the opportunity to fix it. So thank you very much from the committee side. Over to you for some last comments.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much to the honourable members for the questions. Can I also say to the whole team, thank you very much for being here, and once again, for the dedication and hard work and getting great results like this. It is very much appreciated. And then in closing, Chair, as per the earlier questions on the declaration of that amount, I'll tell you that at 0925, I wrote a letter to Advocate Burgers, the registrar, to request a meeting so we can get some clarity on the matter. And I presume he will then report back to the committee.
Perhaps in that vein, I was just reminded by the procedural officer, this part of the meeting, we're going to end up being finished a little bit earlier. So we are going to take a body break now. And there has been lunch catered for 12:30. Please come back because I don't want issues on declaring it with the registrar. So please come back at 12:30 for lunch as well. Then if I can, we're going to take a 15-minute body break and the committee will come back for its own deliberations. Thank you very much. you will recall from previous years that there will be a committee report from our side on the annual report. While we're not going to be deliberating and voting on a committee report just yet, this is an opportunity, or the opportunity for members to give their inputs into the drafting of that committee report. So if I can ask for hands in terms of points that members would like to have captured in the drafting of the committee report. So please, I just want to be clear, everyone's sure of the distinction. So it's not the committee report yet. You will have a second bite at the cherry when you look at the final draft that comes to the committee. But what would you like to have in the committee report? That's the question in front of us. So colleagues, I'm asking for hands. You don't have to rewrite the entire annual report. That would be an impressive feat. Member Heron, I see your hand.
Chair, I think I want to go back to that page 15 and the jumbled explanation that I think we received from the DG around this under two coalition. It's not our job as a committee to deal with the registrar and all that stuff, but if this report is not accurate, covering the cost of an economy cost ticket for Premier Windy, that changed to, it was actually the whole department went and there was a reimbursement of the equivalent of an economy class ticket, and then it changed to actually they were covering the cost of the Premier in his capacity as chairperson of the coalition. Now, he's only chairperson of the coalition because he's the Premier. So I think that this wording is either inaccurate or the explanation received today is muddled, and I don't know how we deal with it, but this report can't be adopted with an inaccurate explanation.
Okay, Member Boyson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I want to add to what Member Heron has raised, but Chairperson, probably to put it that officially as a committee, we would then request the outcome of the meeting between the Premier and the Registrar and the DG. That would then probably give us a way forward when we have that. We request that now as a recommendation or as a resolution, and then the outcome of that would then give us a way forward.
I think the important thing is it needs to be clarified. I think that's the substantive point. But well, Member Aaron, I'll come back to you that I don't speak on behalf of you here, but that's how I took what you said. Member Lekker.
Thank you, Chair. Indeed, it needs to be clarified and be corrected, because how it is written in the book and how they explain it 2 times in different explanations is something that needs to be attended to. Not that I'm saying he should have declared and therefore the registry must come and account to us, but we need to get proper information. Then the second one, Chair, that I would like to speak to, seeing that this one has been covered, DG Malila said they normally have quarterly meetings with the committee on budget in explaining or briefing on the adjusted resolutions in the adjusted medium term targets. So whilst they do it to the budget committee, but this is something that came from this committee. I don't know, the committee will direct me, but I think this needs to be reported here because I picked it up on this vote specifically. Then the third one, Chair, which I also highlighted in my engagements, was around the what was this thing? Was around the 600 jobs that we as the province would have created by 2035. The third one, therefore, in that regard is, for now, where are we? I know this is a target for 2035, but how far have we gone? I think that one also would be my resolution to get an understanding, because the figure 600,000 jobs would be created up until 2035 is one of the commitments that has been made, but how far are we for now? So can we get also a written report about that? Lastly, Chair, the issue of the report of the committee, I'm sure I would not be participating fully because I'm not a regular in this committee, but I think a report that talks to today's annual budget must be done today, pending some of the requests or resolutions that we are making. Thank you.
Okay, Member Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. Just from me on page 111, when it comes to the Commissioner for Children, how does the department monitor the use of earmarked funds according to the report?
Like that included that we just, the Children's Commissioner that...
Yes, it says here, measures taken to improve performance. The Office of the Commissioner will endeavour to cover the costs for further digital systems development. And then it says there, purpose for the earmarked funding, Commissioner for Children. So to me is, how is the department going to monitor the funding of 8.676 million that's going to be given to the department?
Okay, we didn't ask that in the committee meeting, but what I suggest is we take that up as a request from the committee that we would like that as part of one of the resolutions of the committee.
Yes, Chair. Seeing that the commissioner is new to this, I think she's going to need help. Thank you.
Colleagues,
One
then...
last one, Chair.
Sorry,
One last
Member
one, sorry.
Lekker, do you have your hand up?
Yes, Chair. Just one last resolution around the safety plan, Chair. There was mentioning in the previous committee meeting, there was mentioning of a safety plan, draft safety plan that will be issued for members of the community to have an input. I did not ask it because it's something that was going to be provided as per that previous meeting. So I just want to check if it's possible to ask, because we had a session here that talks to the safety. So can we then get an indication when that draft would be made available so that community members can make an informed input based on the draft that was promised to be made publicly available? Thank you.
Member Lekker, that is, if we can bring that up under committee resolutions, we're still on the draft report. What we want to go into the draft. But I've made notes. I'm going to propose a formulation because some of them is a bit of both. So in terms of, there's like a bit of an echo there. Is there? Okay. So colleagues, so what we have in terms of inputs for the draft, I just want to make clear that we have that done. We have, as part of the draft committee report, would say that there's a lack of clarity that possibly needs to be corrected under the Under 2 Coalition, page 15, donation to the provincial government there, right? That's something that we want in the committee report, that we want that there. Member Aaron, am I capturing that correctly? The point is it's not clear, and it needs to be clarified. I want to pick it up under committee resolutions then as a follow-up. So you follow what I'm saying. Then in terms of also in terms of a draft committee report, colleagues, because it would be good if we all agree on this, that it would be good that in the draft committee report, we would like to see globular or overall numbers in terms of impact, for example, job creation, progress against targets there, to include those types of outcomes. And again, I don't want to put words into members' mouths, but it would be nice to if we're in a position where we can see not just the targeted outcomes that you have in the annual report, but also the impact in terms of the strategic outcomes that we're talking about. Right, so that I think is something that we can say as part of the draft committee report, that we would like to see progress in terms of overall strategic outcomes, particularly job creation. I would like to add in there things like expansion of online learning, the e-centers, what we're talking about there. I think the key thing is that we want to see this is the strategy, this is the annual report, and make sure that we also have the overall information there. I think that is what Member Lecker was also touching on. Then I'm going to, Member Stevens, what I suggest is we deal with the commission of your particular proposal under the committee resolutions. And also the draft safety plan online availability that we can also bring in under committee resolutions when we get to that item. But colleagues, so it's those input in terms of the impact of strategy that we would like to see that in the committee report. We would like to see that question clarified. Did I capture, and remember we are not at the committee resolutions yet, we're talking about what we want to see in the draft committee report. Have I captured the inputs? Have I fitted it in correctly? Let me just check there. Is that an old hand or a new hand, Member Lecker? Okay. Colleagues, then under committee resolutions, we will be moving on now to the next item under the agenda, which is the committee resolutions. Then to go to Member Heron's point, we want the resolution would be that we get feedback as to that exercise. If you can just guide us there, and then I'll ask Member Stevens to just guide us in terms of the wording she wants around the Commission of Children, and we'll also get to the draft safety plan availability as a resolution. Member Heron?
Thank you, Chair. My resolution was not that we get feedback. I mean, that I think it was proposed by Member Boyson and Member Lecker. I don't think this committee is the conduct committee, and if the Premier was meant to disclose the trip, then that's not for this committee to get feedback on. My resolution was around, or my proposed resolution is around whether that wording is actually accurately describes the sponsorship received, and if it doesn't, then what is the correct version? I'm more interested in the report being accurate.
No, I get what you're saying. I'm just trying to find the correct word. The resolution is that the committee needs to, and I think that will then cover the other points as well, whether the report was clarified and or corrected, and if any further action or any further steps elsewhere, or there's any implication for processes or steps elsewhere. That's more or less what I'm. Does that wording work? Okay. So, colleagues, so I'm in the summary phase. So I'm not trying to put words into anyone's mouth. I'm trying to get a sensible outcome that we want. Then, in terms of the Commission of Children, Member Stevens, I wonder whether, if you will allow me to take a stab at it. I think, frankly, we want to know, get feedback on the commissioners, the Commissioner for Children, whether we were concerned about it. So we want to know whether it's up and running and kicking off. But can you help us with wording there?
The purpose of the funding that's going to be given to the Commission of Children, how is the department going to monitor that?
Okay, I think that's quite clear. Colleagues, so that's also a proposed resolution. Then, colleagues, you will remember that there was a willingness from the department and also from the committee to obtain submissions from the public of the draft safety plan and assist with getting that to the cabinet and to the department in terms of formulating or finalizing safety plan, there was a request from a member said for us to check whether it's available online from the department. From what I've established, it's not available online. Certainly the report has been circulated to members. I did inquire with the department that this was over the weekend. I understand it's not been available online for people who want to peruse it and perhaps make inputs to us. So there's two things there, colleagues. If we have the draft safety plan, by all means, share it to people that you are aware of. But also, I think the committee, and this could be a committee resolution, that we follow up in terms of our previous committee meeting, whether the draft safety plan has been made available for people who want to make inputs, and has it been made available online. That's what I propose there. Just want to check, colleagues, there's a glare there that I saw. Remember, Lekere, do you have your hand up? Looks like an all that. Colleagues, are we happy with that formulation? Okay. Then
I'm happy, Chair.
okay, so you have your hand on. Hand up.
I'm happy,
Okay.
my hand up, Chair. I'm happy, but remember, I said, as far as the declarations are concerned, that's not necessarily our problem, but our problem begins when we're getting different explanations and the wording that seems to be incorrect on the book itself. So that tomorrow we are not perceived as wanting to negate on the code of on the conduct committee matters, but rather on what is in the book presented to us, which needs to be corrected and clarified. That's all.
Yeah, and colleagues, and that's our job as a committee, we have questions, we need to clarify it. And I would also suggest the last thing that we want is a situation where any of us are not aware of exactly how the rules work, what gets reported. So I think it's useful to clarify all of that. Colleagues, I don't see any other proposals for any other committee resolutions. Then if I can ask the procedural officer, there's a bit of homework that we need to do in terms of the minutes of the previous meeting. Has been circulated there. Colleagues, can I ask for a proposer for the minutes of the previous meeting? That's the only set of the minutes we have here. Can I ask for a proposer?
Chairperson, I so propose.
All right, so I have Member Boyson proposing. Member Stevens is seconding. Then so those minutes have been agreed to. And then, colleagues, there's a request by, I just want to get the document in front of me. There's a request by the Gauteng Provincial Legislature to do, they want to do a joint oversight or a joint meeting with their portfolio committee wants to have an interaction with us to do comparisons, look at best practice on the 10th of November. It's my, how can I say, my alma mater there of 20 years ago. There's going to be some people that I know also there. So colleagues, so they want to have a joint interaction on the 10th of November. I certainly, as a chair, don't have a principal problem, but obviously it boils down to dates. So there is a proposal that on the 10th of November, which is a Monday, that we have a joint meeting with them, with briefings by the Department of the Premier of what happens in the Western Cape. And then also a visit to the Cape Access Centre and the Centre for E-Innovation at 4 Dorp Street, then with representatives from the Premier's office accompanying us. So, colleagues, I want to put it to the committee. It was, is it something that the committee is willing to do? I certainly don't have an objection from my side, but I think it's something, I don't want to just send you a date and you discover there's a date and you feel you have to fit it in when the committee actually has an opportunity now to decide, whether it suits them. So, colleagues, if I can ask for inputs in that regard.
Which department is that, if I may ask, Chair?
Let me just get the wording. It's the equivalent department. I just want to get the correct wording of the Gauteng department. It has changed since I've been there. Yeah, it's a Gauteng Provincial Legislature, but the Oversight Committee, the Standing Committee, what's the wording nowadays? So it is the equivalent committee, we're just finding the original letter for you. E-governance and research development. Yes, they do have and I see eyebrows being raised that's a department. That's what we can ask them. Don't look at me as somebody used to serve there expecting me to explain. But colleagues know that, but look, obviously they do things differently, and we want to compare notes and we can learn from one another. And with the 10th of September, is it something that we should be putting up or organizing a joint committee meeting on? If I can ask for feedback from the committee. And that it's a constituency a day on a Monday. See Member Boyson.
Chairperson, I was going to say that we accept that. We can make an exception because of it is not often that we can engage at this level with other provinces.
Okay. Member Lekker, is that an old hand or a new hand?
Legacy hand, Chair.
Legacy hand. Member Johnson?
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. I don't mind obviously interacting with other provincial legislatures, but I do think that we can rather look at a midweek sort of date, and especially for the constituency political heads that live outside the metro. Mondays are the only days that we actually have to either travel back here or to be in our constituencies. So I am not in favor of hosting them on a Monday.
Member Boyson?
Based on what Member Johnson have now explained, can we find out on whether they are flexible in terms of changing their date? And if they are flexible, Chair, then we can take one of our standing committee days and have that engagement as part of a committee exercise.
Okay. Colleagues, just keep in mind that the purpose of the visit dovetails very well with, just again, find the, perhaps you can assist. There's that event that one can include them in.
Maybe I should just give the committee a background of the request. So the GPL has requested this date about 2 months ago, but they it was the formalities of taking it through the Speaker's office and everything. So there's an African Tech Festival taking place from the 11th till the 13th of November. It's a Tuesday until about, I think, the Thursday. So that delegation will be attending the Africa Tech Festival. We then suggested that they can either request for a date to meet a day before the festival or after the festival. So given the fact that I'm looking at the 14th of November, if it's on a, let me just see if it's the 14th of November, we can maybe ask the Programming Authority if we can meet with them after the Africa Tech Festival, if you want to use a committee date, but we'll have to request that date. But what we did is, well, I did and the chair, we requested in principle the 10th of November, but then it was discussed was that we must get permission from the committee if they are willing to give up their Monday. If not, then we'll have to request for the 14th of November. Also, we also asked the chief whip if the committee is able to attend that festival, the Africa Tech Festival, but each member can maybe just do their own homework on and see if it's something that they would like to attend also.
Member Johnson and then Member Aaron.
Thanks, Chair. Not to make this a programming meeting, but there's already a conduct committee meeting and boys parliament scheduled for the 14th of November.
Member Aaron?
Maybe I missed it, but is the proposal that committee's coming here?
What day is the 14th?
Is it? Birthday. Yeah, on the 14th.
You need to declare if you use government resources to have a birthday party.
No, they're coming here.
Member Bryant?
Chair, I'm an alternate on this committee. I'm not an official member, but I think one thing that might be worthwhile doing is writing back and asking for what the intended outcomes are of the session and the briefing, because yeah, it's very nice to come to Cape Town for a trip, but are we, or as the committee, going to get something substantial out of it? Especially if one has to put other activities aside in order to do that. Just a thought as an alternate.
Colleagues, what it sounds like to me is we need to engage with them and look at whether there's a different date than the 10th of November. What I get is the sentiment is the members of the committee are not keen on a 10th of November date. But we need to look at perhaps they can find in the middle of the tech festival that they're attending the time to interact with the committee in a joint oversight, and we do it after the 10th. Is that did I summarize the sentiment correctly? And then Member Aaron, because he obviously has a problem with Johannesburg, doesn't wants it very much to be in Cape Town. Colleagues, so that we take it forward in that manner.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at a different interaction opportunity during the week. Thank you very much. And colleagues, that I just want to check with the procedural officer, anything else outstanding from your side? Thank you very much, colleagues. The meeting is concluded.